Welcome to our webinar where we're going to think about shame and self-worth. My name is Annemarie and I'm one of the Therapeutic social workers at the Centre for Adoption Support, otherwise known as CFAS.
My name is Ronnie Sumner and I'm also one of the Therapeutic social workers at CFAS.
The aim of our webinar today is to look at what we mean by PACE and explore this in the context of parenting, particularly thinking about the children we live and work with who've been exposed to developmental trauma.
So a bit of background about how PACE was developed. Dan Hughes is a clinical psychologist from the States who looked to create a therapeutic model for working with families with children who were adopted or in the care system and had been exposed to early developmental trauma. Some of you will already have heard of Dan, as his work informs much of our work in adoption. Back in the 1970s, Dan realised that the way he was working in isolation with a child wasn't working. He went on to develop his own model called dyadic developmental psychotherapy, shortened to DDP, which brings together what we understand about attachment theory, development trauma, interpersonal neurobiology and child development. DDP has grown and grown over the years and is now a widely used therapy for children and their families.
PACE is an acronym and stands for Playfulness, Acceptance, Curiosity and Empathy. Each component brings its own special contribution. Curiosity is the mind, the thinking and understanding. Empathy is the heart, focused on feeling. Acceptance is the key that allows the heart and mind to work together, while playfulness brings it all to life. Dan Hughes says that the P in PACE will be small, while the ACE is always in capitals. This is because we can't always be playful, as it may not be appropriate if a child is distressed, for example, but we will always be accepting, curious and empathic. PACE is a way of thinking which deepens our emotional connections in relationships. It can be effective in any relationship that we have in life, but is particularly helpful for a child who has a history of developmental trauma. The child's parent becomes the amygdala whisperer. This is the part of the brain that keeps us all safe, and for children exposed to developmental trauma, this will be a very active part of the brain that can trigger a fight, flight or freeze response when they believe they are faced with danger of some sort. Behaviours that keep them safe in the past may not necessarily serve them well in the present, when they're in loving families having their needs met. By applying PACE, a parent creates a sense of safety for the child and so works to calm the amygdala. The brain-to-brain connection, which PACE encourages, works to heal trauma in a child's past. It promotes strong and healthy attachment, and ultimately, attachment means trust. Dan Hughes best explains PACE by thinking about how we are with a young baby in our care. We'll be very playful and show this in our face, eyes, voice, tone, touch and gestures. We're very animated with babies and they love it. We're very accepting of a baby, and whatever emotion or need they express, whatever expression they show us, we engage with it and accept it without judgment. We'll be continually curious with the baby, trying to make sense of what their communication and behaviour means. By doing so, we show that we're open to the baby's inner life, and we engage in these very gentle, flexible efforts to gain meaning of what the communication could mean. We're quick to show empathy if the baby shows any distress, and we show them that we join them in that distress by mirroring their expressions and tone in a controlled way. Our responsive presence shows them that we sit with them in their discomfort, whatever that may be. By applying PACE, we give a message to the child that we're not working to change them. Rather, we are simply active in being with them, getting to know them, share experiences, and help deepen and organise their own experiences. So now we're going to think specifically about playfulness. Playfulness isn't just about playing, although that in itself is very important. It's also about being playful in our attitude, tone and communication with a child. We hope to create a lightness in our communication that conveys interest in the child. We do this in our voice, which might take on a storytelling tone rather than a more serious one, which some children can interpret it as being irritated, angry, judgmental or uninterested. Playfulness is about having fun together and experiencing a sense of joy. With younger children, we may be more animated and we adjust our approach as a child gets older. For example, we might engage in more banter with a teenager if that fits better for them. So playfulness is an opportunity for connection and it soothes the central nervous system. Our central nervous system can either be socially open and engaged, ready to connect, or closed and defensive. Children who've been exposed to early developmental trauma have often spent much more time in closed and defensive mode because they've had to in order to keep safe and survive. Therefore, their go-to mode will often be this, but we want to encourage them to lower these defences so that they can connect with their carers and build trust and ultimately a sense of safety. Playfulness is the perfect way to do this, as it's impossible to be closed and defensive when we're having fun. It's the absolute opposite of defensiveness. If any of us think of our most significant relationships with friends, partners, colleagues, family, fun, playfulness, laughter will have been major players in how we connected and developed those relationships. Playfulness and shared joy brings us together and makes us want more of that relationship. We also know through research that there's real power in play. Scientists determine that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain, unless it's done with play, in which case it takes between 10 to 20 repetitions. The difference is remarkable and makes sense when we think of early years learning. Play is actually the main task of a child so that they can learn and explore the world safely. If we think of children trying to learn a new blueprint of what a safe carer or parent should be, this finding is significant in considering the absolute importance of being playful in our interactions. Play communicates trust and enjoyment in your child regardless of any challenges. Sometimes when things feel difficult, we can get drawn into quite negative cycles of dealing with behaviours all of the time, and the sense of joy in our relationship with our child can get lost. Some children who've experienced developmental trauma have given up on the idea of experiencing fun that is shared with another. They may not accept hugs or affection, but being playful can give closeness without the parts that feel a little scary for some children. This can help them develop a new blueprint of what a parent or carer should be like. Otherwise, misplaced mistrust continues. Mistrust in adults due to their early experiences being misplaced in their new and safe carers who will meet their needs. Being playful in our approach isn't about being a constant clown all of the time. It's about supporting a child to be more open to a relationship with you and experience positives in their life at a pace that feels safe to them. We mentioned earlier that Dan Hughes compared pace to how we interact with a baby. Both the parent and child delight in being with each other while feeling safe and relaxed. Neither feels criticised or judged, and the playful moments give reassurance to them both that any conflicts, difficulties or separations are temporary and won't harm the strength of their relationship. Playfulness gives the powerful message that the parent is experiencing joy with the child and because of the child. If we're born into a family where we receive good care, then this is the message that we'll have received from the word go. However, many children exposed to early trauma will have received a very different message to this one, so it's incredibly powerful to feel this now in order to build not only trust and safety, but self-worth. Using playfulness is great for repairing after difficulty. It reduces anxiety and shame, which many children can quickly move into, causing their defences to go up. It reinforces the unconditional part of the relationship, which many children struggle with. Because of their doubts that their relationship with a parent or carer is there no matter what, Dan Hughes talks about connection before correction. This emphasises the importance to stay in relationship before any behaviours are discussed, and playfulness is a great way to do this. This way, the child feels safe to remain open and engaged to your conversation with them and avoids any shutting down. Playfulness conveys hope and optimism for the future. A playful approach makes us all feel lighter, adding an element of fun to everyday life. It can help to diffuse difficult or tense situations at times, and a child is less likely to respond with defensiveness when a parent adds a touch of playfulness to their interaction with them. We all benefit from a shared sense of humour during sometimes really tough times in life. It helps get us through and helps us connect with others. Playfulness promotes trust and emotional and psychological safety so that children can feel safe to explore the world and learn.
Acceptance. Total acceptance is at the core of a child's sense of emotional and psychological safety. An anxious child as a result of developmental trauma will struggle to feel totally accepted and instead likely feel judged and evaluated by those around them. When a child has had consistently good enough care from the beginning, they don't question or doubt that their relationship will end when they perhaps misbehave or make a mistake. They learn an inner sense of positive self-worth that makes them believe they are worthy of good relationships and love. However, if a child has had inconsistent care, like our children, they can struggle with this sense of self-worth and believe that they are only loved if they behave a certain way or maybe not worthy of love at all. This can be why we see some children struggle with praise. Some will reject it and even self-sabotage a moment when they may have received praise because they don't feel that the praise that they are receiving fits with who they are. They see themselves and their inner core as bad, so being told they're good doesn't feel right to them. Others may lap praise up, but not necessarily in a healthy way. They may believe that their whole self-worth is dependent on being praised, when actually the message children should have is that they are loved regardless. You are delightful purely because you exist and not because of your actions. Feeling judged and evaluated can trigger the defence system as well as survival behaviours that don't necessarily serve the child well in their new and safe environment. Acceptance is about actively communicating to a child that you accept their thoughts, feelings, wishes, motives and perceptions without evaluation. They are neither right nor wrong. It's about having an unconditional, non-judgmental attitude that we show for the child's inner life. As a result, a child is more likely to reflect on their inner world if they're not feeling evaluated. This is actually the same for any of us. We are all much more likely to be reflective if we're not feeling manipulated or evaluated by the people around us. But for children who were exposed to early trauma, acceptance is even more important as they have had little opportunity to practice reflective thinking as they spend far too long in survival. This reflective space created by total acceptance also provides an opportunity for the child to learn about reciprocal relationships. I can influence you and you can influence me. A child may never have felt safe enough to allow this before. They may have wanted to be in control of others and influence them, but it was too much of a risk for them to allow another to influence them. Acceptance allows the child to learn that this is okay. There is nothing too big to handle, and this builds their trust and confidence in their parent or carer who gives the message, "Your worries do not overwhelm me." Accepting a child's motives and intentions does not mean we didn't necessarily accept the behaviour, which may have been hurtful or harmful to others. Behaviour may still need to be limited, but acceptance does not. When a parent confronts behaviour, often without understanding the factors that led to it, it leads to a defensive response in the child. However, when a child senses that a parent understands those factors but still feels the behaviour is wrong, they will be more likely to accept the consequences. The hope is that over time, the child learns that while behaviour may be limited or criticised, this is not the same as criticising the child's self. The child then becomes more confident that conflict and discipline involves behaviour, not the relationship with their parents or with their self-worth. Acceptance separates behaviour from a child's inner life. Acceptance is a whole body experience. It's conveyed through the tone of our voice, our words, and our interest in a child's world. A parent's non-judgmental interest in a child's inner life is one of the most powerful messages a child can receive. Shame is reduced and a child feels safe enough to explore things that may be difficult for them.
Curiosity, which we'll talk more about now, is the foundation of acceptance of whatever underlies a behaviour. Making sense of how a child has learnt to behave in certain ways can help with acceptance. Once acceptance is clearly communicated, we can be curious about a child's inner life. This involves active, non-judgmental openness and interest in the child's experience so that we can help them make sense of an event or a feeling. By wondering out loud with the child, we're encouraging reflection. As mentioned earlier, this can be an underdeveloped skill for children who've been exposed to early trauma. By being curious, we're helping the child become aware of their inner life, reflect on their reasons for certain behaviours, and then communicate it with their parents or carers. Curiosity communicates respectful fascination with a child's story, feelings and thoughts. It facilitates a sense of safety to explore something that a child may not be able to face alone. We can wonder with a child or around a child about the meaning behind a behaviour, and this lets the child know that the adults are trying to understand. Children often know when a behaviour is not appropriate, but they often don't know the reasons why they did it or might be reluctant to tell an adult. With curiosity, the adults are conveying their intention to simply understand why and to help the child with that understanding. The adult's intentions are to truly understand and help the child, not to lecture or convey that the child's inner life is wrong in some way. Direct questions such as "why did you do that?" can trigger a child's defences, whereas curiosity keeps a child open to the conversation. It involves a quiet, accepting tone that conveys a simple desire to understand the child. "I wonder what was going on there for you," is very different to "why did you do that?" and expecting an answer. The child may say nothing, and sometimes you just need to be curious and guess in earshot of them so that they can get the message that you're trying to figure it out with them, rather than making assumptions and judgments about their motives for something. It's not an interpretation or fact gathering, it's just about getting to know the child and letting them know that. Curiosity must be communicated without annoyance about the behaviour. Being curious can, for example, include an attitude of being sad rather than angry when a child makes a mistake. A light, curious tone and stance can get through to a child in a way that anger can't. If an adult can stay curious about why their child is behaving as they are, the child and adult are less likely to feel cross or frustrated. As curiosity is non-judgmental, this can help the child to be open to how she and other people are thinking and feeling. Curiosity lets the child stay open and engaged in conversations. The child won't always see the link between today's behaviour and past trauma. By using curiosity with a child, they can start to reflect and make sense of their inner life and start to understand themselves. As their understanding deepens, it opens up the possibility that they may not be bad, but rather that they might have a feeling or thought that was stressful, frightening or confusing and could only be expressed through their behaviour. Children exposed to developmental trauma can often have a low sense of self-worth and carry much self-blame. Curiosity helps them to make sense of why they feel the way they do and explore what happened to them rather than things being their fault. As the child communicates this to the adults, the need for the behaviour may reduce, and with that the behaviour itself. The child's feelings about the behaviour may change, with less defensiveness and shame but more guilt, leading to less of the behaviour. If we're not curious, it can lead us to making rapid judgments and assumptions together with non-reflective action that can shut down a relationship very quickly. Curiosity helps us to keep this open with the child.
Dan Hughes states that there is often too much emphasis on reason and calm. Match the child's energy and look for meaning instead. This child needs loud empathy. We often think we have to appear very calm and quiet when a child is dysregulated. However, if a child is experiencing big feelings, for example frustration or anger, they may not feel that we totally get it if we respond with a calm, low, quiet voice. We need to match the energy that the child is experiencing in a controlled way. We are not also becoming dysregulated, but matching the energy, and by doing so, we're giving the child the message that we understand the gravity of what they are feeling. Brené Brown, a social work professor in the States, has done lots of research on human emotion. This is a short clip by Brené which describes what empathy really means and how it feels.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
When talking about empathy, Brené Brown says, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. Empathy communicates your feelings for others. You have to connect with the feeling of your child, which can sometimes feel uncomfortable. We often, as parents, go into sympathy and solution mode as we don't want to see our children in emotional pain. For example, if our child comes home from school upset and says, I have no friends and have no one to play with, we might go into reassurance, listing their friends that we know of and trying to change their mindset. However, when we do that, we are squashing the feelings of the child. It's much more powerful for them to hear you say, wow, that sounds like you've had a really tough day, as they feel that they have been heard and their feelings validated. In the words of Kim Golding, empathy involves sitting with the uncomfortable, getting alongside your child so that they feel you are sharing in their distress and really get it. Empathy helps your child to regulate their difficult feelings. If we think of the example we gave earlier of a very young baby, they are calmed in their distress by us matching the affect, the energy and emotion, and by being present with them in their distress. They are reminded that they are not alone in this. I'm here, I've got you. As a parent or carer, we have to have confidence that this is enough so that we don't go into solution mode. Giving empathy before discipline, connection before correction, helps the child stay open to the conversation, enabling reflection, and in turn, over time, learning as well. It communicates understanding and reduces shame. We can still have firm boundaries with empathy. For example, I know it's hard for you when I say no. The delivery and tone is very different, but when we do this, but the boundary is still the same. The child is much more likely to accept the boundary if we deliver it with empathy. We know that empathy facilitates empathy. Showering a child with empathy is much more powerful than trying to instantly find solutions with a sticky plaster which just ignores what's going on underneath. Repeated episodes of empathy teach a child about reciprocal relationships, and they learn to show empathy to others. Solutions tend to naturally revolve as a result, and children learn the power in being validated. Feeling understood ultimately promotes trust and healing.
In summary, playfulness, acceptance, curiosity and empathy are not done in isolation, but rather are threads woven together that run through our interactions with the child. We can be all four things during the same conversation with the child. Maybe not always playful, as we said earlier, but will always be accepting, curious and empathic. PACE focuses on the whole child, not simply the behaviour. It helps children to be more secure with the adults and reflect upon themselves, their thoughts, feelings and behaviour, building the skills that are so necessary for maintaining a successful and satisfying life. The child discovers that they are doing the best that they can and are not bad or lazy or selfish. Problems diminish as the need for them reduces. Through PACE and feeling safer, children discover that they can now do better. They learn to rely on adults, particularly their parents, and trust them to truly know them. They learn that their parents can look after them in a way that they could never do on their own. PACE encourages hope for all. When children experience the adults doing the best they can to understand their inner life and behaviour, they start to believe that the adults really will keep on trying until things get better for all of them. For adults, using PACE most of the time can reduce the level of conflict, defensiveness and withdrawal that tends to be ever present in the lives of children who've experienced developmental trauma. Using PACE enables the adult to see the strengths and positive features that lie underneath more negative and challenging behaviour. So thank you for watching this webinar about PACE, and we hope it's been useful for you. If you'd like any more information about CFAS webinars or services, then please contact us via the contact details on our website.